Malik stood in front of the class, holding a piece of paper in his hand. His palms were sweaty, and his heart beat fast. It was Future Goals Day at school, and every student had to talk about their dreams. One by one, his classmates spoke. "I want to be a basketball player," said one boy. "I want to become a famous fashion designer," said a girl with a big smile. Then it was Malik's turn. He looked around the room. Most of the students came from rich families. Their shoes were brand new, their clothes perfect. Malik's shoes were torn at the sides, and his shirt had been stitched by his mother last week. Still, he stood tall and said with pride, "I want to go to Harvard University and study law." For 2 seconds, the room was silent. Then, laughter, loud and cruel. "Harvard? You? Bro, you can't even afford lunch. Better dream of McDonald's, not Harvard." Even the teacher, Miss Brooks, raised her eyebrows. She didn't laugh, but she gave him a look that said, "Be realistic." Malik's face turned red. He didn't say anything. He just looked down at his paper and whispered to himself, "I'll show them." After school, Malik walked home alone. His bag was heavy, but not just with books, with pain. As he entered the small apartment, he saw his mother washing clothes in the kitchen sink. The washing machine had broken months ago. She worked 2 jobs, one at a diner, the other cleaning offices. She looked tired, but when she saw Malik, she smiled. "How was school, baby?" she asked. Malik put down his bag. "It was okay," he said quietly. His mom looked at him. "Did something happen?" Malik didn't answer. He just went to the tiny bedroom he shared with his little sister. He sat on the bed and stared at the wall. His sister, Maya, only 5 years old, sat beside him and hugged his arm. He looked at her and smiled. Then, he pulled out a notebook and started writing. He wasn't writing homework. He was writing a letter. "Dear Harvard Admissions, my name is Malik Carter. I am 16 years old and live with my mom and little sister in a small apartment in the city. I know many people apply to your school with perfect grades, perfect families, and perfect lives. I don't have those things. But what I do have is a dream. I want to become a lawyer because I've seen people in my community suffer. I've seen people lose their homes, their jobs, and their children just because they didn't know their rights. I don't want to be rich. I want to be useful." Malik paused. His hand trembled slightly. He looked out the window. In the distance, he saw flashing lights. Police had stopped someone again. In his neighborhood, that happened every day. He continued writing. "I believe Harvard can teach me how to fight for people who don't have a voice. I may not have a shiny resume, but I have a heart full of purpose. If you give me a chance, I will not let you down. Thank you for reading my letter. Sincerely, Malik Carter." He folded the letter carefully, placed it in an envelope, and wrote the address of Harvard University on it. He didn't tell anyone, not even his mom. The next morning, before school, he quietly dropped the letter in the mailbox. As he walked away, he whispered again, "I'll show them." At school, nothing had changed. The same kids laughed. The same teacher ignored him. But something inside Malik had changed. He wasn't just a poor kid with a crazy dream anymore. He was a fighter. He had sent a letter into the world. Now, he was waiting for the world to answer. Days passed. Weeks passed. Malik didn't tell anyone about the letter. It felt like a secret that he had to keep locked inside. Every morning, he would get up early to help his mom with her chores before going to school. And every night, he would study hard, often until the small hours of the morning. But in the back of his mind, there was always that one question: will Harvard even read my letter? At school, things were the same. The students who mocked him still laughed. The teacher, Miss Brooks, still looked at him with doubt. But Malik didn't care anymore. He had a bigger goal now. He had a purpose. One afternoon, as Malik walked down the hall, a group of students laughed and pointed at him. "Yo, Malik, still dreaming about that Harvard thing?" One of them said. "Yeah, right." Another one added, "You should be happy if you even pass high school." Malik didn't respond. He just kept walking. But the words stung. They always did. When he got home, his mom was already there, sitting at the kitchen table. She had a tired smile on her face, but Malik could see the worry in her eyes. She worked hard, always tired, always doing her best to make ends meet. "Did you get any good news today?" she asked gently. Malik shook his head, hiding his disappointment. "No news yet." His mom stood up and walked over to him. She put a hand on his shoulder. "Don't let them get to you, Malik. You've got big dreams. And big dreams take time to come true." But even though Malik heard his mother's words, something inside him wondered, was it really possible? Could a kid like him, from a neighborhood like his, really go to a school like Harvard? The next day, Malik returned to his normal routine. It was another Monday, and that meant another week of school. As he walked to his locker, a familiar voice interrupted his thoughts. "Yo, Malik." It was Michael, one of the guys who always laughed at his Harvard dream. Malik stopped. He didn't want to get into another argument, but Michael wasn't finished. "So, did you get your big news from Harvard yet?" Michael asked, smirking. Malik took a deep breath. He didn't want to say anything, but something in him snapped. "I'm not gonna stop dreaming, Michael. And when I get in, you'll be the first to know." Michael's grin faded for a moment. Then he laughed. "Sure, man. Whatever you say." But Malik wasn't looking for approval anymore. He wasn't looking for anyone's permission to dream. He had already made up his mind. Weeks turned into months, and still no word from Harvard. Malik started to feel the weight of the silence. But then, one day, the letter came. It was a thick white envelope, marked with the official Harvard seal. Malik almost couldn't believe it when he saw it. His hands trembled as he ripped it open. His heart raced faster than it ever had before. This was it, the moment he had been waiting for. He pulled out the letter and began to read, his eyes scanning the words quickly. "Dear Malik Carter, thank you for your application to Harvard University. We appreciate your interest in our law program. After reviewing your application, we are pleased to inform you that we would like to offer you a place in our incoming freshman class. Furthermore, we are offering you a full scholarship to attend Harvard University for the next 4 years. This scholarship includes all tuition fees, room, and board. We look forward to seeing you on campus this fall. Sincerely, Dean Richard T. Phillips, Harvard Law School." Malik's hands shook. His heart pounded in his chest. Was this a joke? Was it really happening? He read the letter again, and again, and again. It was real. He had done it. Harvard had accepted him. Full scholarship. Tears filled his eyes. Not because he was scared, but because for the first time in his life, he felt like he had finally won. All the doubts, all the laughter, all the harsh words, it didn't matter anymore. He had made it. Malik ran out of his room and found his mom sitting on the couch. He waved the letter in front of her face. "Mom, look. Look, they accepted me. Harvard, Harvard." His mother stood up slowly, tears instantly streaming down her face. She hugged him tightly. "I always knew you could do it, Malik. I always knew you were meant for something bigger than this." And for the first time, Malik truly believed her. But the next day at school, things were different. When Malik walked into the classroom, he was holding the letter still in his hand. But now, the other students noticed. The bullies stopped laughing. They stared at him, mouths open, eyes wide. One by one, they fell silent. Even Michael, the boy who had laughed at him the hardest, didn't say a word. The teacher, Miss Brooks, finally spoke up. "Malik," she said, her voice softer than usual, "you received an acceptance letter?" Malik nodded, holding his head high. "Yes, Miss Brooks. And they gave me a full scholarship." A few students whispered among themselves. Malik could see the surprise on their faces. They hadn't expected this. They hadn't expected him to make it. The class went silent. Everyone was staring at Malik, realizing they had made a mistake. They had laughed at him. They had doubted him. But now, they couldn't look away. Malik smiled to himself. "I told you I'd show them," he whispered quietly to himself. The next few days at school felt strange for Malik. It was like the entire world had shifted. Everywhere he went, people looked at him differently. They no longer laughed at his dreams. They no longer mocked him. Instead, there was a quiet respect in their eyes. But Malik didn't feel any joy in the change. All the attention made him uncomfortable. It wasn't the kind of attention he had wanted. He didn't want to prove the bullies wrong. He just wanted to be seen for who he was, someone with real goals and a real future. Still, he couldn't deny the feeling that something inside him had shifted too. Confidence, a quiet strength. Every morning, as he walked to school, Malik held his head a little higher. Every night, as he studied, the weight of the future no longer felt like a burden. It felt like a promise. A week later, Malik found himself sitting in his usual seat in history class, trying to focus on the lesson. But his mind kept drifting. He was thinking about Harvard, about the letter, about the full scholarship. It still felt too good to be true. He couldn't stop thinking about it, couldn't stop replaying the moment in his head when he first read the letter. "Malik, are you with us?" Malik snapped back to reality. Ms. Brooks was standing at the front of the class, looking directly at him. "Sorry, Ms. Brooks," Malik muttered, embarrassed. He wiped his forehead, which had grown damp. Ms. Brooks gave him a knowing look. "You're thinking about that letter, aren't you? I saw the way you were holding it when you walked into class that day." Malik nodded, his cheeks burning. "Malik, it's okay to be proud," Ms. Brooks said gently. "But don't forget, hard work comes before the reward. Keep your focus. This is just the beginning." Malik gave a tight smile. He was used to hearing his mom's words of encouragement, but hearing them from someone else made them feel real. For the first time, Malik felt like he wasn't just chasing a dream. He was already living it. At lunch, Malik sat alone. He wasn't being a loner on purpose, but the attention he had received in the past few days made it hard to be around his classmates. They were still whispering about him, but now, the whispers were different. They weren't mocking him, they were asking questions. "How'd you get in, Malik? Is it really true you got a full scholarship? Man, that's huge. You must be super smart." Malik didn't want to explain. He didn't want to tell them the details, didn't want to relive the moment of acceptance again. He wasn't trying to prove anything anymore. He just wanted to get through the day. But then, Michael, the boy who had laughed at him the hardest, came up to his table. Malik didn't expect him to approach. Michael had been the loudest critic, the one who had laughed and told Malik he wasn't good enough. Michael stood there for a moment, not saying anything, just looking at Malik. Finally, he spoke. "Hey, Malik, man," he said almost shyly. "I wanted to say, I'm sorry for laughing at you before. I didn't really get it, you know, the whole Harvard thing. But you proved me wrong." Malik looked at him, unsure of how to respond. Michael wasn't the kind of person to apologize easily, and Malik hadn't expected anything from him, especially not an apology. "Thanks," Malik said quietly. "It's all right. You don't have to apologize." Michael nodded. "Still, man, Harvard? That's big. I'll respect that, seriously." The silence stretched for a moment, but then Michael turned and walked away, leaving Malik with his thoughts. Malik knew that not everyone at school had come around. Not everyone believed in him yet. But it didn't matter anymore. He had already proven to himself what was possible. At home, his mom was still working long hours, but every evening, Malik would sit at the kitchen table with her, going over his plans for the future. He had started to look into what it would take to move to Harvard, how much money he would need for travel, how long it would take to get ready for the next chapter of his life. His mom always listened with pride in her eyes, but Malik could see the worry too. She wasn't sure how they'd afford everything. The cost of living, the cost of tuition, the cost of everything in between. It was a lot. But Malik knew this was his chance, his one chance. 2 weeks later, a familiar voice broke Malik's focus. It was Dean Phillips, the head of admissions at Harvard. He had been invited to speak at a local high school event, and Malik's school had the privilege of hosting him. Malik's heart raced when he heard the news. He knew this was his moment, the chance he had been waiting for. When the day arrived, Malik entered the auditorium with a sense of purpose. He didn't know if he could speak to the dean or even if the dean would remember his name. But he had to try. He sat in the back, his heart thumping in his chest, as Dean Phillips spoke to the students. He talked about how Harvard was for dreamers, for thinkers, for those who weren't afraid to challenge the world. At the end of the speech, Malik stood up. He had waited long enough. He walked through the crowd toward the stage. Dean Phillips noticed him immediately. "Malik, right?" he asked with a smile. Malik's heart skipped a beat. "Yes, sir. I'm Malik Carter. I'm the one who, I applied." Dean Phillips raised an eyebrow. "I remember your name. Your story. It's one we don't forget easily." The dean smiled and shook Malik's hand. Malik couldn't believe it. Standing in front of Dean Phillips, the man who had the power to change his future forever, his heart pounded in his chest. He had expected the dean to be like everyone else, just another person who wouldn't take him seriously. But Dean Phillips didn't treat him that way. There was something different in the dean's eyes, a quiet recognition. "You know, Malik," the dean said with a smile, "it's not every day that we get a student who wants to prove the world wrong. But you've got a fire that I think Harvard could use." Malik's mouth went dry. He wasn't sure if he was hearing things right. Was the dean really saying what he thought? "I've read your letter," Dean Phillips continued. "I've seen your grades, your ambition, and honestly, I think you belong here. Harvard could use someone like you, someone who isn't afraid to go after what he wants." Malik swallowed hard. He wanted to say something, to thank the dean for believing in him, but the words got stuck in his throat. Malik started, but the dean held up his hand. "Don't thank me yet," he said with a chuckle. "You've still got a lot of work to do. But I wanted to meet you in person. I wanted you to know that we see your potential." Malik was speechless. The dean saw his potential. Harvard saw his potential. All those years of hard work, all those days spent fighting for a chance. Was it really finally paying off? The dean's expression softened. "Look, Malik, you're going to face challenges. It won't be easy. But I'm offering you something that most students only dream of, a real shot at Harvard. And I believe you can do it." Malik stood there, feeling the weight of the moment. This was it. This was the opportunity he had been waiting for. But it didn't come without responsibility. It didn't come without challenges. He had to prove himself, not just to Harvard, but to the world. "I won't let you down, sir," Malik said quietly, his voice filled with determination. Dean Phillips gave him a nod of approval. "I'm sure you won't." As Malik left the auditorium, he could hardly believe what had just happened. The dean of Harvard had spoken to him. He had given him an opportunity. For the first time in his life, it felt like the universe was on his side. Malik was walking on air. But as he walked back to class, something started to bother him. What about the cost? He had been offered a scholarship, yes, but there were still so many things he didn't know. Travel expenses, housing costs, books. Would he be able to afford everything? At home that evening, Malik sat at the kitchen table, holding the acceptance letter in his hands. His mom had already gone to bed after a long shift at work, but Malik couldn't sleep. He was staring at the letter again, reading it over and over, wondering if he was ready. His mom had always told him, "You're born for something big." But now, he was starting to wonder if that was really true. What if the challenges were too much? What if Harvard wasn't the right fit for him? He thought about his mom, how hard she worked, how much she sacrificed for him to have a chance at a better life. She would be proud of him, but she would also worry. She always worried. How would they afford the costs? How would they make it work? The next morning, Malik went to school, his mind racing with questions. He couldn't shake the thought of the money. It wasn't just about the scholarship. It was about everything else. As he sat in class, his mind wandered again. The teacher, Ms. Brooks, noticed him zoning out and gave him a gentle nudge. "Malik, is everything okay?" she asked, her voice warm. Malik hesitated, unsure of how to explain what he was feeling. I just don't know if I can make it work, Ms. Brooks. It's Harvard. I'm not sure if we can afford everything." Ms. Brooks smiled softly. "Malik, you're not alone. There are programs, there are scholarships, there are people who want to see you succeed. It's not all about the money. If you really want this, you'll find a way. And don't be afraid to ask for help. Sometimes, the hardest part is reaching out." Malik looked at her, feeling a little lighter. Maybe he had been looking at the problem the wrong way. Maybe he didn't have to do everything on his own. Maybe there were people out there who would help him. That afternoon, Malik's phone buzzed in his pocket. He pulled it out and saw a message from an unknown number. He hesitated, then opened it. It was from Harvard Financial Aid. "Hello, Malik. This is Jane from Harvard Financial Aid. We received your application and wanted to let you know that we've reviewed your information. Based on your circumstances, we can offer additional assistance to help with living expenses, books, and other costs." Malik's heart skipped a beat. This was it. He wasn't alone in this after all. He quickly replied, "Thank you. Thank you so much for helping me." And just like that, the weight on his shoulders felt a little lighter. Harvard believed in him. His school believed in him. And now, there were people out there willing to help him get there. That evening, Malik went home, sat down at the kitchen table, and looked at his mom. She was exhausted, her face worn from a long day at work, but Malik had something to tell her. "Mom," he said, "I have everything I need. I can go to Harvard. They're going to help with the costs. Everything is going to work out." His mom looked at him, her eyes filling with tears. She pulled him into a tight hug. "I always knew you could do it, Malik. You've always been special." And for the first time, Malik believed it. He wasn't just a dreamer. He was a Harvard student. And this was only the beginning. Malik sat on the edge of his bed, staring at the suitcase in front of him. His heart was racing. Tomorrow was the day. The day he would finally leave for Harvard. The day his life would truly change. But as excited as he was, there was a growing feeling of unease in the pit of his stomach. He had worked so hard to get to this point, but now that it was actually happening, Malik couldn't help but wonder, was he really ready? He had spent his entire life in a small town, in a neighborhood where dreams were rarely discussed, let alone achieved. His mom had always told him he could do anything, but he had never truly believed it until now. Now, he was about to walk into the world of the elite, the world of people who had never known what it was like to struggle. As the plane touched down in Boston, Malik could feel the weight of his worries growing heavier. Harvard, he had heard so much about it, but now, seeing it up close, it felt overwhelming. The massive buildings, the beautiful campus, everything about it screamed success, and Malik felt small in comparison. His mom had insisted on coming with him for the first week. She wanted to see him settled in, make sure everything was all right. Malik appreciated it, but part of him just wanted to get on with it. He knew it would be hard, but he was determined to prove everyone wrong. "Malik, are you sure you're okay?" his mom asked as they stood in front of the dormitory. "You don't have to rush into this. We can figure this out." "I'm fine, Mom," Malik replied with a smile, though his voice betrayed his nerves. "I've worked so hard to get here. I'll be all right." His mom hugged him tightly. "I believe in you, Malik. Just don't forget where you came from. Don't let this place change you." Malik nodded, fighting back tears. His mom had sacrificed everything for him to have this opportunity. He couldn't fail her. He couldn't fail himself. The next few days were a blur. Malik attended orientation, met his roommates, and tried to settle into his new life. But something was off. He noticed the way some of the students looked at him. The whispers, the stares. He wasn't sure if they were curious or judgmental, but he knew one thing. He didn't fit in here. During his first class, Malik sat at the back of the room, trying to keep to himself. The professor started speaking about the history of law, and for a moment, Malik felt a sense of purpose. This was why he was here. This was his future. But then, he heard a voice behind him. "You really think you belong here?" Malik froze. He turned around and saw a group of students sitting behind him, their eyes fixed on him. One of them, a tall girl with blonde hair, was staring at him with a look of disdain. "What's your deal?" Malik asked, trying to keep his voice steady. The girl smirked. "I just don't get it. A kid from the projects, thinking he can hang with us. You're just here because of a scholarship. What makes you think you're as good as us?" Malik's heart raced, but he refused to show weakness. He took a deep breath and stood up, facing the girl. "I'm here because I worked harder than anyone else to get here. I'm here because I belong here, just like you." The girl raised an eyebrow but didn't respond. Malik could feel the eyes of the entire class on him. This was his moment. If he backed down now, he would never be able to walk with his head held high again. "I'm not here for your approval," Malik continued. I'm here for myself. I'm here because I'm going to be the best lawyer this world has ever seen. So, if you can't respect that, maybe you should keep your opinions to yourself." The room went silent. For a moment, Malik wondered if he had said too much. But then, something surprising happened. The professor, who had been quietly observing the exchange, nodded in approval. "Well said, Mr. Malik," he said. "I think we can all learn something from your confidence." As the days passed, Malik's fears didn't fade. In fact, they only grew stronger. He started to realize that Harvard wasn't just a school. It was a battle. It was a battle to prove himself, to show that someone from his background could make it. Every time he walked through campus, every time he sat in class, there was a constant pressure on him to be perfect. And yet, despite all the doubts and challenges, Malik kept pushing forward. He studied late into the night, writing papers, preparing for exams. He practiced his public speaking, his arguments, anything that could give him an edge. But just as he thought he was getting the hang of things, the reality hit him harder than ever. It was a week before midterms when Malik got the news. His mom had been in a car accident. Nothing too serious, but enough to make Malik drop everything and rush home. He boarded the first flight out of Boston, his mind racing with worry. The plane ride felt like the longest journey of his life. When he finally arrived, he rushed to the hospital where his mom was resting. A little shaken, but otherwise okay. "I'm fine, Malik," his mom said, smiling weakly. "I just need some rest. Don't worry about me." But Malik couldn't stop worrying. He had come so far. He had made it to Harvard, and now, with everything on the line, his mom needed him. In the quiet of the hospital room, Malik realized something that had been weighing on his heart. This wasn't just about getting into Harvard anymore. It was about proving that he could handle whatever life threw at him. It was about staying true to himself, no matter how tough things got. The next day, Malik returned to Harvard, more determined than ever. He knew there would be obstacles. There would be days when he felt out of place, when he doubted himself. But he also knew that he wasn't going to let anything stop him. Because Malik had something they didn't see in him, a strength that came from within, a strength that no one could take away. As Malik sat in the library, surrounded by books and notes, he couldn't help but feel the weight of everything pressing down on him. It was midterms week, and this was the moment he had been preparing for. The work, the late nights, the sacrifices, it was all leading to this. Malik stared at his open textbook, but his mind kept drifting back to the week before. His mom's accident had shaken him to the core. Even though she was fine, the thought that he might lose her or that something else could go wrong made his heart heavy. But there was no time to dwell on that now. He had to focus. He had to prove to everyone, especially himself, that he was capable of handling Harvard, no matter the challenges. The days leading up to the first exam were filled with tension. Malik's heart raced as he entered the classroom, his palms sweating, his mind swirling with everything he had studied. Could he do this? Could he really compete with students who had been groomed for success their whole lives? The professor entered the room, a tall man with glasses and a stern look, and announced, "You have 2 hours to complete the exam. No talking, no cheating, just your knowledge." Malik took a deep breath. The test began. He read the first question carefully. It was a complex legal issue, something that could easily trip up even the most prepared students. Malik glanced around the room. Some students immediately began scribbling down answers, confident and fast. Malik, on the other hand, paused. He wasn't going to rush. He knew he had to take his time and think through every answer. This wasn't about speed. This was about quality. His pencil scratched the paper as he carefully worked through each question, thinking of every detail. It wasn't easy. There were moments when doubt crept in, moments when he wondered if he was in over his head. But then, he would remember the words his mom had said to him when he was younger. "You're born for something big, Malik. You can handle anything." That was the strength he needed. When the exam was finally over, Malik walked out of the classroom feeling exhausted, but oddly at peace. He had done his best. That was all he could do. He knew he had given everything he had, even when it felt like the odds were stacked against him. As the days passed, Malik continued to focus on his studies. refusing to let the distractions of the campus get to him. But as midterms came to a close, he couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. Was his best enough? Malik had been working so hard, but his confidence had begun to waver. Maybe those students who had laughed at him back in high school were right after all. Maybe he wasn't cut out for this world. It was during one of those nights, while Malik was studying in his dorm, that he received an unexpected knock on his door. "Malik, you in there?" It was a voice he recognized. Professor Thompson, the one who had always challenged him, always pushed him to think harder. "Yeah, Professor Thompson. What's up?" Malik called out, sitting up from his desk. The professor entered the room, holding a letter in his hand. It was a thick envelope with Harvard's official seal. Malik's heart skipped a beat. This was it. "I have something for you," Professor Thompson said, sitting down beside Malik. He looked at him with a knowing smile. "You've worked hard, Malik. I know you've been facing a lot of pressure, but you're capable of great things. And this letter, it proves it." Malik's hand trembled as he took the letter. He could feel his palms sweating, his breath catching in his chest. What if it was bad news? What if all of his efforts, all of his dreams, were about to be shattered? With a deep breath, Malik opened the letter. He scanned the first few lines and froze. "We are pleased to inform you that you have been accepted into the prestigious Harvard Law School program for the upcoming semester." Malik couldn't believe his eyes. He had done it. He had made it. He looked up at Professor Thompson, who was smiling proudly. "Malik, I knew you had it in you. This letter isn't just a piece of paper. It's a testament to your hard work, your perseverance, and your belief in yourself. You belong here." Tears welled up in Malik's eyes, but he quickly wiped them away. He had done it. He had proven to everyone, especially to himself, that he was worthy of being at Harvard. He wasn't just the poor kid from a small town anymore. He was a student at one of the most prestigious universities in the world, about to pursue his dreams. As he stood there holding the letter, Malik thought about everything he had been through to get to this point. The laughter, the doubts, the struggles, none of it had been easy, but none of it had been in vain. He had faced the challenges head-on, and now he was ready for whatever came next. He wasn't just chasing a dream anymore. He was living it. The next morning, Malik walked into his first class with a new sense of purpose. As he passed by the group of students who had once doubted him, he held his head high. He wasn't going to let them affect him anymore. He belonged here. Malik couldn't believe he was standing in the grand lecture hall at Harvard Law School. It was the beginning of a new chapter. After everything he had been through, after all the sleepless nights, the doubts, and the challenges, he was finally where he had dreamed of being. But today, there was more at stake than just his personal success. Today, the entire freshman class was gathered for a special orientation. It was a day when the most promising students were introduced to the rest of the school, and Malik was about to experience something that would change everything for him. The professor at the front of the hall began speaking, welcoming the new students and offering words of encouragement. But Malik wasn't focused on that. His mind was elsewhere. He kept thinking back to everything that had led him here. The moment he told his classmates he would make it to Harvard, the sneers, the laughter. He thought about the nights he had stayed awake, studying, not sure if he would ever be good enough. But now he was here, and nothing would stop him. Today, the professor continued, "We will introduce you to someone who has shown incredible dedication and promise, someone who embodies the spirit of perseverance and excellence. I believe they will inspire all of you." Malik's heart skipped a beat. Was he talking about him? The professor turned and gestured to the side of the room. Malik's eyes widened as he saw the figure standing there. It was Dane Harris, the head of the entire law school. He was known for being strict but fair, someone who had the power to change the course of a student's future with just one word. "Please join me in welcoming Malik Williams," the professor said. "Malik, come on up." Malik stood frozen for a moment, the room suddenly feeling 100 times larger. The other students began clapping. It wasn't loud or over the top, but it was enough to make Malik's heart swell with pride. They were applauding him. He slowly walked to the front, feeling the weight of every step. When he reached the podium, he looked out over the room, his hands trembling. He cleared his throat, trying to steady his nerves. This was his moment. The dean smiled warmly and shook his hand. Malik, you've proven yourself not just in your academics, but in your character. Your journey, your story, is a testament to what we stand for here at Harvard. You didn't let anything stop you, and because of that, we are proud to have you as part of this class. Malik could hardly believe what he was hearing. The same people who had once laughed at him, doubted him, now stood applauding him. He had done it. He had turned his dreams into reality, and now, he was going to do more than just survive at Harvard. He was going to thrive. As the applause continued, Malik thought back to that day in high school when everyone had laughed at him. They didn't believe he could do it. They didn't think someone like him, someone from a poor neighborhood, could ever make it to a place like Harvard. But now, he was proving them wrong. He thought about his mom, who had worked 2 jobs to make sure he had everything he needed. She had always believed in him, even when no one else did. Her sacrifice had brought him to this point. He turned to the dean and said, I want to thank you for this opportunity. I've worked my entire life to be here, and I'm not going to waste it. I will give everything I have to make sure I succeed. Not just for me, but for everyone who believed in me. The dean nodded, impressed by his words. I have no doubt, Malik. You've already shown that you're capable of great things. Now, it's time for you to show the world. The ceremony ended, and Malik made his way back to his seat, still feeling the weight of the moment. This was it. He had finally made it, and now it was time to prove that he was more than just the boy from a small town with a big dream. He was a Harvard student, a future lawyer, a person who was going to make a difference in the world. In the days that followed, Malik's confidence grew. The stares from the other students started to fade. They no longer saw him as an outsider. They saw him for what he truly was, someone who deserved to be there. He worked hard every day, not just to keep up with the rigorous curriculum, but to excel. He pushed himself beyond his limits. Late-night study sessions, extra research, practicing his arguments. Nothing was too much for him. Malik knew that he had to prove to everyone, especially himself, that he was more than capable of succeeding in this world. One day, as Malik sat in the student lounge, he overheard a conversation between 2 students. They were talking about a scholarship opportunity for the best law student in the class, a scholarship that would cover all tuition for the next year. You think anyone from our class could actually win it? One of the students asked.